I will hand it off to, thank you. I'll hand it off to Renee John to get us started.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. This is our quarterly Capital Region Collaborative meeting for We Prosper Together. As always, our intent with this is to keep you informed with what is going on with our unified strategy to expand economic and workforce development, leading to good paying jobs in the capital region. So we're pleased that you've joined us today. You can go to the next slide, Chester. Some of the items we're going to be sharing with you today are Catalyst program updates, so discussing information from round one, as well as some summary information from the recently closed application for round two. We'll also share some updates from the state of California, our grantor on this, and a restructure of our leadership council going into this next phase of We Prosper Together, which will include an opportunity for you to engage as well if interested. But before we go on to those items, we want to introduce you to two new team members that are joining us to provide additional help with We Prosper Together. And so next slide, Chester. I'd like to introduce you to Sam Bayless and Chloe Pan. I will start with Sam first. Sam is joining us to assist with sector advancement. This is along our priority industry sectors that came out of the data and community engagement work that showed opportunity to expand economic and workforce development activities to grow good paying jobs in our region. So Sam is tasked with helping us organize our efforts along with regional entities across our 8 counties to make that happen. And I will hand it over to Sam in case he wants to share a few words about himself.
Hi, everybody. Just want to share that I'm very happy to be here at Valley Vision and working with you all on the We Prosper Together initiative. Really look forward to getting to know you all better and diving into our priority sectors. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. And also want to introduce to you Chloe Pan. If you have been around Valley Vision for a long time, you might know trivia that Chloe Pan was here some time ago after leaving and doing more on her educational and career journey, and then has recently come back to us. We're so grateful to have her. She's going to be working on the anchor strategies that support economic and workforce development, including housing, childcare, transportation, and those kinds of safety net supports that are important for ensuring folks receive and can persevere through training that's necessary to achieve and maintain good paying jobs. She's also helping us with metrics and evaluation as we continue to refine that work to make sure we are measuring the right things in the effort that we're moving forward with together, and there'll be more information about that coming in future months. So Chloe, I'll hand it to you if you want to give a brief hello.
Thanks, Renee. It's great to be here and supporting this initiative. I'm coming back to Valley Vision, as Renee said, after being on the East Coast for the last several years. I was managing some USAID and USDA funded international food security programs. So I'm really excited to be supporting this region's inclusive development work.
Thanks, Chloe. And at that, I'm going to hand it over to Gretchen, who's going to get us started with our Catalyst program overview.
Thank you, Renee. Let's move on to the next slide. So just to frame as we're getting into this program overview, you all have seen this language before, but want to remind everyone about the purpose of this Catalyst phase. So we have our 3 main goals listed out here, which are 1, to invest in industries that advance environmentally sustainable, future-focused, high-quality job opportunities, and to ensure that workers and disinvested community members are the primary beneficiaries of this work. In addition to that, we're also advancing projects towards implementation readiness so that they are better positioned to compete for future funding, whether it be federal, state, or private. So having those goals in mind, this next slide is going to provide an overview of the round one projects that were awarded shortly before our last collaborative meeting. So in case you haven't seen this breakdown here, you can see how the projects were distributed across our region. We have 5 projects identified on the left that indicate the entire region as their service area. So those are called out there. And then you can see we have these more sub-regional or county-specific projects as well. So these are overall the 11 projects that were funded in the first phase of Catalyst funding. So these awards went out in about February, and contracts started shortly after. And so these projects have all been kicking off their project work, getting personnel on board. And we are now in the evaluation phase for the second round of funding. So if you go on to the next slide, this graphic, still looking at the first round, will show you the breakdown of how that funding was allocated between the projects. So in the first round, we capped that we would award a maximum of $6.5 million out of the $9 million total available. We ended up funding about almost $5 million of those dollars, leaving about $4 million available for this second round. So here you can see the distribution of funds, also noting in particular, the District Ranch project, we were able to co-fund with the K-16 Collaborative, which is an exciting collaborative opportunity between our 2 groups. And moving forward, we're going to have that $4 million available for this second round portfolio, which will hopefully be announced at the end of this month. So on the next slide, looking into that second round, to give a little bit more detail, the second round RFP was released in April of this year, and it closed just earlier this month on June 15th. And that $4 million is available to fund pre-development project activities across the region. And awards are anticipated to be announced at the end of this month after our Leadership Council meeting on the 24th. And then with that approval, second round projects would be beginning their contracts on August 1st. On the next slide, I want to go into a little bit of detail about differences or improvements that were made to the second round based off of feedback that we heard from our partners, from our community ambassadors, and directly from community members and proposers, so that the second round process could be smoother for everybody involved and more accessible to those who are seeking funding. So this first slide calls out revisions that were made to the RFP itself. And just to go through those pretty quickly, we clarified some of the language on the application so that it was really clear what the eligibility requirements are. This includes more clearly defining pre-development, using language that we thought was more accessible and also more direct. In addition to those language changes, we added more detail on our community ambassadors, their role and their the opportunity that they provide for projects to connect with disinvested community members. So encouraging that collaboration and also providing contact information in case they want to initiate that communication during the application process. We also expanded the definition of disinvested communities that was on the application. Previously, we were using the state's California Jobs First designation, which was based off of census tract data. And in this second round, we broadened it to be more inclusive, to be more aligned with our values, and have more considerations than just census tract data. We also added new sections understanding pre-development and what Catalyst funding can cover to really enhance that clarity and make sure people can navigate the RFP, know where to find the information that they're looking for. And then we also added a short public-facing project summary prompt to the application. This was not a scored section, so we didn't add this for additional scoring, but essentially for the purpose of getting a concise, 30 words or less, what are you going to do with this funding? That's helpful both for proposers to get their tagline out there for, you know, project promotion, but then also for reviewers and evaluators so that they can easily track projects and know what we're referring to with each proposal. And then lastly, we adjusted the word counts and scoring weights to the RFP. So word counts were shortened. The application overall became shorter, a lighter lift, hopefully, for proposers. And then scoring weights, the scoring scale ultimately was doubled so that there could be more differentiation between scores and easier for evaluators to tell, you know, variance between how projects are performing in the review. On the next slide, continuing this kind of feedback to action section, we also put out some community support resources. One of those being that all round one applicants were provided feedback on their proposal, personalized with identifying what their lowest performing sections were, as well as a high-level summary of reviewer comments. This was a pretty standardized practice, so while the feedback was not incredibly in-depth, we didn't want to give an unfair advantage to those who were not able to get a submission into the first round. We also were, you know, taking meetings with proposers who did request more detail about what their feedback meant and walking them through the evaluation process and how scores came out the way that they did. So we were holding those meetings. And then in addition to that, we sponsored a free grant writing workshop series so we can build capacity around the region around grant writing and having the, you know, tools to really have strong storytelling and also to understand an RFP or understand an application and know what it's looking for. So the next slide goes into a little bit more detail about that grant writing workshop series. To start it off, there were 2 virtual sessions, and these virtual sessions covered the same content. And this was kind of the launch of this series. The virtual sessions were really like grant writing 101, providing tips and tricks for strong storytelling, for how to understand what an application is asking for. And these were recorded. We have them available on our website, so these resources can be used and reused again. And this is really an opportunity for people to just get the kind of one-on-one tips on how, you know, for strong application writing. These virtual sessions were the precursor to in-person sessions that took place later, which you can see on the next slide. And these in-person sessions were a more hands-on kind of workshop where people could bring forward drafts of their proposal wherever they were at in that process, and they could get, you know, hands-on workshopping and feedback about their writing, about their storytelling, so that they can feel really confident and empowered submitting into this second round. So we received really great feedback from those who did attend. We had 1 session in Roseville and 1 session in Colusa. We were particularly excited about hosting that in-person session in Colusa. If you recall the geographic distribution map that was shown earlier in this meeting, Colusa was the only county that didn't have a project specifically call them out in their service area, other than the 5 region-wide projects. So we wanted to really make sure that this resource was available to proposers in that area. It was really well attended. I think overall we had over 30 people attending these workshops. So really excited to see that participation and really grateful for the feedback that we've received on it and for Sarah Hall, who facilitated these sessions. Next slide, please. All right, so looking at the round 2, here you can see an overview of all of the submissions that we've received to the second round. So this application closed on the 15th, and we received a total of 48 submissions with a combined funding request of almost 45 million. And then on the left, there's a table that shows how the submissions were distributed by geography. I'll note that the numbers, obviously, you can probably pretty quickly tell, add up to greater than 48. This is because any projects that indicated multiple counties in their service area are counted in each of those respective counties. Except for the all 8 county projects, there were 7 projects that indicated the entire region as their service area. Those are not included in each of the county numbers. So there are 7 that indicate the entire region, and then the rest of the numbers there indicate if a county was specifically called out in a project service area. On the next slide, you can see the distribution of all submissions by industry sector. So on the left, you can see our tradable industry sectors. There is quite a bit that came in from working lands. I think that's pretty reflective of our strong forest and agricultural presence in our region, that we also received submissions in each of our sectors, as well as our opportunity sectors. It was strongest in construction, followed by healthcare. And then we also received submission in each of our sectors, including creative economy and tourism, which is great to see. So on the next slide, just to run through the timeline for this second round process, the application's closed and we are currently in the review period. So right now, evaluators are independently scoring proposals, and then there will be deliberations that take place and a portfolio development that will occur before bringing forward that recommended portfolio to the Leadership Council so they could vote on approving it, and that will be on July 24th. So pending the approval of that recommended portfolio, projects are anticipated to begin on August 1st. And then all project activities and funds must be expended by September 30th, 2026. Exciting. All right. So that closes out our Catalyst program updates. And then we'll move into our state updates on the next slide. And then let's go one more forward. So I want to start off with the Tribal Opportunity Fund as part of the Regional Investment Initiative. On June 25th, awards were announced for the Tribal Opportunity Fund, which allocated $15 million out to 14 California Native American tribes, tribal coalitions, and tribally led organizations. And these funds are going towards projects that aim to accelerate economic development, provide job training, grow businesses in environmentally sustainable ways, including research activities as well. So that QR code there can scan you to the full list of awardees for the Tribal Opportunity Fund. And for those of you who need a refresher, this was part of the phased approach of California Jobs First, just as the Catalyst Fund is one of the funding streams through this program, as well as the Implementation Fund. There was this $15 million allocated for the Tribal Opportunity Fund as part of the program. So moving forward, the next slide goes over, yes, the economic blueprint, which the state released. And this is essentially the roadmap of how to meet the California Jobs First North Star of helping create, attract, and increase access to good paying jobs. So the way that the state developed this is as you're familiar, our region developed our regional plan. Each of the 13 California Jobs First regions created these plans, and then these are what fed into the state's development of the economic blueprint. So everything that is in the economic blueprint is reflective of what each of the regions put together for their own regional plans, kind of creating this bottom-up approach to state economic planning. On the next slide, I go into a little bit more detail about how how the priority industries were identified by the state. And they create this categorization that's based off of, where this industry sector is in terms of its development and what its projected needs are moving into the future. So they have these different categories. I'll go over them at a high level, but there is strengthen, accelerate, bet, and then anchor, which you may have mentioned, or you may have heard Renee and Chloe mention earlier today. Strengthen is going to be those sectors where we have a competitive position in the state, but there is leveling growth or wages. Accelerate are those that are projected to have growth as we move into the future. So these are kind of that future focus aspect. And then bet are emerging sectors. So they're a little bit newer. There's a little bit less existing groundwork for these work, but they also have those high projections moving into the future. And then those anchor sectors are those that are really focused on accessibility, that are the necessary industry sectors for folks to move into economic prosperity in any of the mentioned above. And if that was confusing, do not worry. The next slide shows this in a visual way, which is probably a lot easier to process. So it may be difficult to see because there's a lot going on here, but this just shows you how these sectors are categorized in each of these ways, with strengthen on the left, accelerate in the middle, and then bet all the way on the right, and then anchor serving as that foundational category at the bottom. So I'll pause here for just a minute if folks want to digest this a little bit further before going into a little bit more detail about our role in aligning with the state. And I'm going to peek at the chat too to see if any questions are coming in. Doesn't look like it. All right. So let's move on to the next slide. So again, one of the funding streams as part of the California Jobs First program is the implementation fund. There was the first application process. There's going to be 2 phases to this, one happening next year. But the first application has closed, and our region was included in 14 projects that were submitted into this first round application. And projects that were invited to move into the application phase include our region in the semiconductors and microelectronics sector. This application was actually led by Valley Vision, as well as projects in life sciences and ag tech. At this point in time, they have not announced or made any decisions about funding allocations. So we'll keep you all informed as we hear more. I do see a question coming in the chat. Anchor does not mention transportation in the slide. So I think so for our regional plan, we have our economic mobility strategies, which is what we consider to be our priorities for advancing accessibility to economic prosperity. And we do call out transportation as one of our economic mobility strategies, which we see as kind of aligning with how the state is identifying these anchor industries. I will call out that for the state, they do identify transportation infrastructure in their anchor strategies. I think that's maybe a little bit more niche than how we consider transportation as one of our accessibility priorities. But transportation is called out both at the state level and within our region. I hope that answers your question. All right. So let's move one slide ahead. Thinking about our region and how we're aligning with the state now that this blueprint is out, we really kind of want to call out these activity areas for us moving forward in the We Prosper Together initiative. So some of our main goals moving forward is continuing to advance workforce development in these sectors and making those low barrier pathways accessible into these industries that the state has identified as priority. That also includes business support, helping entrepreneurs and small manufacturers scale innovations, system alignment, and that can be within other collaboratives, and then aligning with the state now that they have released this blueprint, and sector coordination, which we mentioned Sam will be playing a big role in moving forward, so that we're continuing to advance our sectors, bring investments into the region, and really advance job opportunities for people who live here. And that kind of smoothly segues into the Leadership Council restructure segment of our meeting. For those of you who this may be the first time you're hearing this, I'm going to be going into kind of a shift that's taking place now that the Catalyst phase is closing, and our Leadership Council, which played as the decision-making body during the planning phase of this initiative, helping us develop the regional plan, what that body is going to look like as we're moving forward, and how people can stay involved in the sustainability of this initiative past the planning and catalyst phases. So moving on to the next slide. Here you can see the goals that were outlined for the Leadership Council at the beginning of this process. We have check marks here to indicate what was achieved during the planning phase. And a huge part of that was creating this collaborative network. You all who are in attendance today, as well as the broader governance structure, which includes our community ambassadors, and each of our Leadership Council members with different, seated representations for geography, industry expertise, economic development knowledge, and creating this kind of collaborative so that we can co-develop a shared regional vision, which is that second goal there. Creating that regional roadmap, creating our regional plan that identifies our priority industries, identifies our economic mobility strategies, those accessibility priorities, and creating that vision for us to drive forward the work moving forward. So now that we have the regional plan, we're really focusing on, what are the outcomes that we want to see? We want to be attracting investments into our region, creating more quality job opportunities, and growing our priority sectors. So as we're moving into this second phase, we're really narrowing in on these goals now and beginning to see activity happening here. So next slide, please. As we're experiencing this shift, we're also seeing a need to adapt the model and role of the Leadership Council so that we can really support these activities, as well as supporting, the long-term sustainability of We Prosper Together. We see We Prosper Together and this collaborative economic planning and inclusive economic development as something that exists beyond the California Jobs First program, which, as you saw earlier, wraps up at the end of next year. We do not want that to mean it's the end of our collaboration. It's the end of our work towards creating this inclusive economy for our region. So we want to be thinking about how can we sustain what we've built so far and have it be long-term for long-term impacts. So the next slide shows a graphic of how this restructure could look. And we plan on having committees that are focused on our industry sector advancement, which are those orange bubbles there, as well as accountability and evaluation. This is where we'll be developing metrics of success and also metrics for ensuring equity is included throughout the entire process. And then investment sustainability, which is about that, long-term program sustainability. The next slide goes into a little bit more detail about these committees. So that Accountability and Evaluation Committee supports outcomes tracking, including the ongoing iteration and refinement of evaluation metrics. Investment sustainability supports the development of our strategy for sustained funding, and so that this initiative can be developed with a longer term scale. And then our industry-based committees, which are aligning with our regional plan to grow our priority tradable sectors. And this includes seeking funding opportunities, developing partnerships, and advising on equitable industry growth across the counties in our region. Next slide, please. So here you can kind of see how that committee structure fits into our broader We Prosper Together collaborative. So you see here the community ambassadors and our Catalyst project grantees will have ongoing relationships with these committees as needed, so that project activity work, so that our community engagement work is all aligned with advancing the goals of our regional plan. So you see they're all within this box. If you can't read it, that bottom bubble there says cross-cutting elements, being equity, sustainability, and geographic representation. So having these committees and then having the connecting points between them is where we're really going to be able to advance these kind of more narrow goals now that we have the vision, advancing the different pieces of them and making sure that we're maintaining our values and our goals throughout the entire process. In addition to that, on the next slide, you can see some additional activities with aligning with other regional bodies so that we can really foster this shared vision moving forward. So the K16 Collaborative, as I mentioned earlier, has been partnering with us. And so we have co-funded one of our Catalyst projects already and continuing to align with them as we develop career pathways, particularly as they relate to education, connecting those into training opportunities and job opportunities. So aligning together on our plan there, as well as other economic development organizations in the region, advancing our, investments in the region and our priority industry sectors. Next slide, please. So yes, this graphic just shows again how everything is all fitting together. We're trying to foster this really deep collaboration within the region, and we've already built a really strong foundation for that. So really excited to see this work moving forward. Next slide, please. So if your ears perked up as I'm talking about this, even if you were not previously involved in the Leadership Council, but you see one of these program areas where you would be interested in participating and are able to commit to committee meetings as needed, either on a quarterly basis or possibly popping up in between if there's specific activity that comes up, please reach out to Chester, which his email is seen here on the screen. Or if you want to identify other potential members that are related to the areas you see there, being industry, equity, sustainability, or geographic representation, please reach out to us and let us know. And then this new framework is anticipated to begin following the approval of the Round 2 Catalyst portfolio. So that would be at the end of July. And then I don't see it here. I think we had a slide, maybe we don't, about a timeline. I believe the first kickoff meeting for the new restructure would be
We don't have that exact date determined, but July will be the final meeting of the current structure, and then the committees will be having their own meeting schedules. So if you decide that you want to participate in one of the sector committees or in the equity accountability or investment sustainability, we'll be kind of arranging those meetings based on the participant availability of those in those groups. And we are considering quarterly or potentially bi-monthly meetings at the most. So you'll have some idea of what the frequency is. So yeah.
Thank you, Renee. All right, and with that, I took a peek at the chat and it seems we have some questions coming in. I see a question here. If we applied for Catalyst Round 2, should we wait to express our interest in participation in the Leadership Council? No need to wait there. For the vote to approve is going to be conducted by our current Leadership Council in the original structure. So there's no concern about conflicts there. So feel free to reach out regardless of whether you applied to the second round or not. And then how many members do we currently have on the Leadership Council? think we're sitting around 40, I believe. There's been a little bit of shifts in positions lately, so that's another reason that is driving this kind of shift. Our leadership council originally were onboarded in 2022, I believe, and there's been a lot of change since then, so we're excited to kind of revamp and reestablish this group. Any other questions? If not, we can move on to the next slide.
Hey, Gretchen, there is a follow-up question on that
Oh,
from
I
Katie
see.
about geographic representation when choosing members for the leadership council. Yes, there was a, a reflective representation on the leadership council. I'll go ahead and share a link. You can go ahead and see the names and affiliations of everybody.
Thank you, Sam. Yeah, so our leadership council in its current model has seated members, seated representation, and it could be based off of geography, it could be based off of industry knowledge, it could be based on other sort of community representation. So each leadership council member has a specific seated representation so that we can have this kind of reflection of our region. And that includes, geography, looking at rural members coming in, urban members coming in, as well as that kind of knowledge expertise as well. And the link that Sam just put into the chat shows our leadership council members as well as our broader governance structure model. And then I see a question came in about state budget, how that's affecting implementation funding. Renee, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the implementation funding is already determined or allocated. I'll open it up to you if you have more detail.
We don't have any updates that the second round of implementation funding would be affected by the state budget, but of course that can always happen. So I think, and even in this first round, so they have decided on some projects are going to be advancing forward. There hasn't been any conversation about elimination or reduction, but we know that things aren't done until they're done. So we will keep you informed, but we haven't heard anything yet.
Thank you. Yeah, I forgot to think about that second round. That's not taking place until next year. Goodness. All right. With that, I'll move us into our final section here, next steps and where we are moving forward. So as we mentioned, our leadership council meeting is going to be happening later this month. And this meeting, to close out the leadership council structure from the planning and catalyst phases, we're going to be highlighting an impact report of the leadership council's work to date, followed by that very exciting vote to approve the second round of catalyst projects. And then, as was mentioned earlier, we're working on finalizing metrics for tracking the success of We Prosper Together. Of course, finalizing is a strong term, as these will be continuously developed to work best for our region and work for the projects that are awarded, which we do not know yet. And we'll be continuing to have those be developed in collaboration with our accountability committee. So with that, I believe that closes out our content for today. I'll open it up again to see if any more questions want to come in through the chat. But in case not, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. And I hope you enjoy your time back and the rest of your Monday afternoon. Thank you, everyone.